Imagine that every experience in your life, whether joyful or painful, has a deep purpose. What if I told you that, according to Buddhism, nothing happens by chance? Stay with us and discover how this ancient philosophy teaches us that everything has a reason. Join us on this journey of self-discovery and find inner peace by understanding that everything happens for a reason. The law of impermanence. Understanding constant change. Nothing in life is permanent. Everything changes. The seasons, our emotions, relationships, even our own body. In Buddhism, this principle is called anicca, impermanence, and it is one of the fundamental truths of existence. Suffering arises when we resist this reality. We want happy moments to last forever, and for difficulties to vanish immediately. But life is a constant flow. The key is not in holding on or resisting, but in learning to accept each stage with calmness. Think of nature. A river doesn't stop or cling to any one form. It flows without resistance. A tree sheds its leaves in autumn, but it doesn't suffer from it. It knows that spring will bring new ones. We too can learn to let go of what no longer serves us, trusting that every change leads us to a new phase of growth. Accepting impermanence frees us. It allows us to enjoy the present without fear of losing it, and to face challenges with the certainty that they too will pass. If everything is in constant transformation, every difficult moment is just another phase in the journey, not a final destination. True peace doesn't lie in avoiding change, but in flowing with it. When we stop fighting reality and learn to live with detachment, we discover a tranquility that doesn't depend on external circumstances, cause and effect, karma in our daily lives. Nothing in life happens by chance. Every action, thought and word we express generates a consequence, even though sometimes we don't immediately notice it. This is the essence of karma, one of Buddhism's most fundamental teachings. It's not about punishment or divine reward. It's a natural law, just like gravity. Everything we do creates energy that sooner or later returns to us in some form. Imagine you throw a stone into a lake. The ripples generated expand in all directions, altering the surface of the water. Similarly, our actions create ripples in our lives and in the lives of others. Some effects are immediate, while others may take years to manifest. But one thing is certain, everything we do leaves a mark. Karma is not only about what we do, but also what we think and feel. If someone lives filled with hatred and resentment, even if they don't act outwardly, that energy continues to affect them and shape their reality. In contrast, someone who cultivates compassion and patience, even in the face of difficulties, creates an atmosphere of peace around them. The quality of our lives is determined by the actions and thoughts. Sometimes we see people who seem to do wrong without facing immediate consequences, while others do good and suffer injustice. This can seem contradictory, but Buddhism explains that karma doesn't always manifest right away. It's like planting a seed. Some germinate quickly, while others take longer to bear fruit. The important thing is to understand that everything we do has an effect, even if we don't see it right away. Karma also teaches us about personal responsibility. Often we blame others or circumstances for what happens to us. But if we look deeper, we can see how our own actions have contributed to our current situation. This doesn't mean punishing ourselves or feeling guilty, but recognizing that we have the power to change our lives by changing our actions and thoughts. In Buddhism, there is a story that illustrates this clearly. A disciple asked his teacher why some people are born into poverty and others into wealth, why some seem lucky and others do not. The teacher responded with an analogy. If you plant apple seeds, you will get apples. If you plant thorns, you will get thorns. Each life is the result of countless past actions, and our current decisions are planting the seeds of our future. Karma doesn't mean resignation or fatalism. We are not trapped in an unchangeable fate, but we can transform our reality with every choice we make. If we've created suffering for ourselves or others in the past, we always have the opportunity to change, to act with more wisdom and compassion. There are three main ways to generate karma: through thought, word, and action. Each of these aspects impacts our life and the world. A thought of hatred may seem insignificant, but if we nourish it, it can turn into hurtful words and eventually harmful actions. On the other hand, a thought of love and gratitude can transform the way we speak and act, creating harmony around us. The practice of mindfulness helps us to become more aware of our karma in daily life. If we observe our actions and thoughts honestly, we can notice patterns that lead us to repeat situations of suffering or happiness. For example, if we always react with anger to problems, we create a tense environment around us, attracting more conflict. In contrast, if we respond with calm and understanding, we break that cycle and create a more peaceful reality. It's also important to remember that karma not only affects our personal lives, but it also has a collective impact. The decisions we make influence our family, our community, and even the world. If we cultivate values like generosity and empathy, we not only improve our own lives, but we also contribute to a more harmonious environment for everyone. One essential aspect of karma is intention. It's not the same to help someone for personal gain as it is to do so from the heart. Even if the external action is the same, the energy we generate is different. That's why Buddhism emphasizes the importance of the motivation behind every act. Throughout our lives, we've accumulated many experiences and habits that influence who we are. However, the past doesn't define us. Each day is a new opportunity to plant good seeds. It doesn't matter how many times we've made mistakes. We can always start anew. If we want to transform our karma, we can begin with small changes. Being kinder in our words, acting with honesty, helping those around us without expecting anything in return. These gestures may seem simple, but they have a profound impact. Just as a drop of water can create ripples in a lake, every small, positive action we take contributes to a greater change. Karma reminds us that we are the creators of our lives. It doesn't mean we can control everything, but we can choose how we respond to what happens to us. Every decision we make is an opportunity to move toward a fuller and more meaningful life. By understanding the law of cause and effect, we stop seeing ourselves as victims of fate and begin to take responsibility for our existence. This not only gives us more power over our lives, but it also allows us to live with greater peace and confidence. Accepting karma helps us see every experience, even the difficult ones, as an opportunity to learn. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we can ask ourselves, "What can I learn from this?" With this mindset, every obstacle becomes a lesson that strengthens us and brings us closer to a greater understanding of life. In the end, everything we do comes back to us, not as a punishment, nor as an arbitrary reward, but as the natural result of our choices. When we live with this awareness, we begin to act with more wisdom, creating a path of greater harmony and well-being, attachment and suffering, learning to let go. Buddhism teaches us that suffering arises from attachment. We cling to people, things, emotions, and even ideas, believing they will bring us happiness. But nothing in life is permanent. When what we desire changes or disappears, we feel pain. The problem with attachment is that it makes us depend on the external. We believe that without a relationship, without a job, or without certain conditions, we cannot be happy. But when we base our peace on what we cannot control, suffering is inevitable. Letting go doesn't mean stopping loving or valuing. It means learning to enjoy without possession, to be present without demanding permanence. A love free from attachment doesn't seek to control or hold on, but flows with acceptance. When we stop clinging, we find a freedom we hadn't imagined. We realize that we can enjoy the present without fear of losing it and live with more lightness, without carrying the anxiety of wanting everything to remain the same. True peace arises when we learn to let go of what we cannot retain. Accepting that life changes frees us from suffering and allows us to live with greater fullness. The wisdom of acceptance, flowing with life. Life rarely follows the plan we imagine. From a young age, we are taught to fight for what we want, to strive to reach our goals, and to resist when things don't go as expected. But few teach us the importance of acceptance. In Buddhism, learning to accept life as it is, without unnecessary resistance or struggle, is one of the keys to finding inner peace. Acceptance doesn't mean settling or resigning. It doesn't mean giving up or surrendering to difficulties. Acceptance is a state of clarity in which we recognize reality as it is, without judgment or rejection. It's letting go of the need for things to be different, so we can find peace with what already exists. Often, we suffer not because of what happens to us, but because of how we resist it. If something doesn't go as we want, we get frustrated. If someone doesn't act as we expect, we get angry. If things change, we hold on to the past. But life continues its course with or without our approval. Resistance only creates suffering, while acceptance allows us to flow with more peace. Buddhism teaches us that everything that happens in our lives is part of a web of causes and conditions. Nothing happens for no reason. And although we may not always understand the reason immediately, every experience has something to teach us. Instead of fighting against the inevitable, we can ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? A Zen master used to tell the story of a farmer who had a horse. One day the horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying it was a great misfortune. The farmer, however, responded, "Who knows if this is good or bad?" Days later, the horse returned, bringing several wild horses with it. The neighbors celebrated his good fortune, but the farmer said the same thing, "Who knows if this is good or bad?" Soon after, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses and fell, breaking his leg. Again, the neighbors lamented his misfortune, but the farmer repeated, "Who knows if this is good or bad?" Weeks later, the army came to the village to recruit young men for war, but left the farmer's son behind because of his injury. What seemed bad turned out to be good, and what seemed good might have been bad. Life is a constant flow, and only over time can we see the bigger picture. Accepting reality doesn't mean we shouldn't take action when necessary. If something causes us suffering and we can change it, we should. But if something is beyond our control, fighting against it will only bring more distress. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference between what we can change and what we must accept. The practice of acceptance is strengthened through meditation and mindfulness. When we meditate, we learn to observe our thoughts without judging them or trying to change them. We realize that emotions come and go like clouds in the sky. Over time, this helps us accept life situations with more calmness. One of the greatest challenges is accepting others as they are. Often we suffer because we want to change people, for them to be more affectionate, to think like us, to act in a certain way. But each person is as they are, with their own process and learning. When we stop trying to control others and accept them with their light and shadows, our relationships become more harmonious. Acceptance doesn't mean approving everything that happens. If someone treats us poorly, it doesn't mean we should tolerate it. But we can accept that person as they are, without expecting them to change so that we can be at peace. Instead of fighting against reality, we can decide how we want to respond to it. It's also important to learn to accept ourselves. Often we are our own harshest critics, punishing ourselves for our mistakes or wishing we were different. But self-compassion is key to well-being. Accepting ourselves doesn't mean we don't want to improve, but it means we stop fighting against ourselves and start treating ourselves with more kindness. Change is inevitable. Throughout our lives we will experience losses, failures and disappointments, but we will also find love, growth and new opportunities. Life is a balance of difficult moments and happy ones. When we learn to accept both with the same serenity, we find peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. Accepting life as it is frees us from the burden of resistance. It allows us to let go of the moment with gratitude. When we stop fighting with reality, we discover that happiness doesn't lie in having everything under control, but in flowing with what life presents to us. Every day is an opportunity to practice acceptance. We can start with small things, accepting traffic without frustration, accepting that it rains when we plan to go out, accepting that the people around us have their own timelines and processes. Over time, this practice prepares us to accept life's big changes with more wisdom and calm. True freedom is not in controlling the world, but in learning to flow with it. Acceptance gives us that freedom, allowing us to live with more lightness, confidence, and inner peace. Hidden lessons, finding meaning in adversities. Throughout life, we face difficult moments that seem to make no sense. Losses, failures, illness, conflicts, and situations that challenge us. Each adversity carries with it a lesson, even though we may not see it immediately. When things don't go as we expected, we often react with resistance, anger, or sadness. But if we observe carefully, we can discover that even in the darkest moments, there is a hidden teaching. Nothing in life is meaningless if we know how to transform suffering into wisdom. One of Buddhism's principles is that everything is interdependent. Nothing happens in isolation. Everything is the result of a series of causes and conditions. Many times what we see as an obstacle is in fact a necessary step in our growth. What hurts us today might be preparing the way for something better. A Buddhist story tells of a disciple who found a caterpillar struggling to get out of its cocoon. Seeing its effort, he decided to help by opening the cocoon with his hands. However, the butterfly that emerged could not fly. Its wings hadn't fully developed because the effort to break out of the cocoon was what strengthened them. In the same way, our difficulties help us develop the qualities we need to move forward in life. Suffering can be a teacher if we are willing to listen to it. It forces us to look within, to question and to grow. It shows us our weaknesses and gives us the opportunity to turn them into strengths. Every challenge we face offers us the choice to remain in pain or use it as fuel for transformation. In life, we don't always get what we want, but we always get what we need to evolve. A relationship that ends may teach us the value of independence. A professional failure may show us it's time to redirect our path. A health issue may remind us of the importance of taking care of our body and mind. Nothing is in vain if we are open to learning. Many times, only with time can we see the purpose behind a difficulty. Something that seemed like a misfortune at the time may turn out to be the best opportunity of our life. The important thing is not to stay trapped in complaints or despair, but to trust that everything has a reason, even if we don't yet understand it. Buddhism teaches us to see every experience as an opportunity for growth. Instead of cursing the storm, we can ask ourselves what it is teaching us. Is it showing us we need more patience? Is it helping us let go of control? Is it strengthening us for what's to come? The human mind tends to resist pain. We want to avoid it, ignore it, or eliminate it as quickly as possible. But pain, when faced with awareness, has the power to transform us. It's like fire that purifies gold, removing what's unnecessary to reveal its true essence. When something hurts us, we can see it as a sign that there is something we need to work on within ourselves. If a criticism affects us deeply, it may be an opportunity to strengthen our self-esteem. If a loss leaves us devastated, maybe it's time to learn to let go with love. Every difficult emotion shows us a part of ourselves that needs to be understood and healed. Accepting adversities doesn't mean surrendering to them. It means seeing them as teachers along our path. We can take every obstacle as a curse or as an opportunity to grow. The way we choose to interpret them defines our experience. A helpful exercise is to write about the most difficult moments we've faced and analyze what we have learned from them. We might discover that thanks to those challenges, we developed more resilience, compassion, or wisdom. Even the most painful events can have a purpose if we look at them through the lens of learning. When we trust that everything has a reason, we face challenges with more calm and clarity. Instead of asking ourselves, "Why me?" we can ask, "What for?" This simple shift in perspective changes our relationship with suffering and allows us to grow instead of staying trapped in pain. Life's lessons are not always easy, but they are always valuable. Every experience, no matter how difficult, is preparing us for something greater. When we learn to see challenges as opportunities, we stop fearing them and start embracing them as part of our evolutionary process. Nothing is by chance. Every difficult moment is a doorway to a new understanding. We just need the courage to cross it. The practice of mindfulness, living in the present. The human mind tends to wander between the past and the future. We remember what was with nostalgia or regret, and we project what will be with anxiety or expectations. Rarely are we fully present in the only moment that exists, the now. In Buddhism, the practice of mindfulness teaches us to stay rooted in the present, to live each moment with full awareness and without distraction. When we get caught in thoughts of the past, we reopen old wounds or cling to memories that no longer exist. When we worry about the future, we create imagined situations that may or may not happen, bringing unnecessary stress. But the present is the only real moment, the only space where we can act, feel, and experience life fully. Mindfulness is not just a meditation technique, it is a way of living. It means being completely present in whatever we do, without being pulled into automatic thoughts. Eating mindfully means enjoying each bite instead of eating quickly without noticing. Listening with full presence means truly paying attention without planning what we will say next. Walking mindfully is feeling each step, the touch of the ground, the breeze on the skin, instead of being lost in thought. Most of us live in constant distraction. We check our phones while talking to someone, think about work while sitting with family, or carry worries while eating. Our body is in one place, but our mind is somewhere else. This keeps us from enjoying life and adds to our stress. The practice of mindfulness helps us restore our ability to be here and now. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a restless monkey, jumping from one thought to another without pause. Meditation is a way to train that monkey to settle down and focus on the present. At first, it may feel difficult, but with time, we become more aware of our thoughts and learn to choose where to place our attention. A basic mindfulness practice is to focus on the breath, noticing how the air flows in and out without trying to control it. Each time the mind wanders, we gently return to the breath. This simple act brings us back to the present and strengthens our ability to concentrate. Mindfulness does not mean eliminating all thoughts. It means learning to watch them without being carried away. Picture your mind as the sky and your thoughts as passing clouds. You don't need to cling to them or try to make them vanish. You simply observe and let them drift away. When we live with mindfulness, we see that many of our worries are unnecessary. We realize that suffering comes when we are trapped in thoughts of the past or the future. But when we anchor ourselves in the present, we uncover a peace that does not rely on outer conditions. Mindfulness also helps us respond instead of react. Many times we act on impulse, letting anger, fear, or frustration take control. But when we stay present, we create the space to choose how we want to respond to each situation. Instead of reacting automatically, we can act with greater calm and clarity. In Buddhism, it is said that every moment is a chance to awaken. We don't need to wait for a retreat or a special occasion to practice mindfulness. We can bring it into every part of daily life, when we wash our hands, sip a cup of tea, or listen to the song of a bird. Life is unfolding right now, and every moment is precious if we know how to value it. Many people chase happiness as if it were something waiting in the future, when they get a better job, meet the right partner, or reach a certain goal. But happiness is not in the future, it's in how we live the present. If we don't learn to be present now, we will always be running after something that feels out of reach. Living with mindfulness allows us to notice the beauty in the ordinary. It helps us enjoy the small details we usually miss. It connects us to our own life in a deeper, more meaningful way. It doesn't mean we won't face problems, but it gives us the clarity to handle them without getting trapped in mental drama. Every moment of life is a chance to practice mindfulness. We can begin with small steps, breathing consciously for a few seconds when we wake up, listening fully to the people around us, or savoring each meal with gratitude. With time, this practice becomes a habit that reshapes the way we live. Mindfulness is not an abstract idea, but a practical tool for finding peace in the midst of chaos. It reminds us that life is not in the past or the future. It is here and now. And when we learn to live in the present, we discover that happiness is not something to chase, but something we can experience in this very moment, turning the mind from pain toward clarity. Our mind can be our greatest ally or our biggest source of suffering. Buddhism teaches that it is not what happens to us that causes suffering, but how we interpret it. If we learn to watch our thoughts without being carried away by them, we can transform our lives. Most of the time, we react automatically, forgetting that we have the power to choose how to respond in each situation. Through meditation and self-observation, we can train the mind to stop acting on impulse and begin living with more clarity and calm. It's not about removing suffering, but about understanding it. Every difficult emotion is a chance for growth. When we stop identifying with our fears and worries, we discover a freedom that does not rely on outside conditions. The path to enlightenment is not a faraway goal, but a way of living in the present with awareness. By releasing attachment to negative thoughts and nurturing inner peace, we can transform our mind, and with it, our reality. Thank you for walking with us on this journey into the wisdom of Buddhism. We hope these teachings have offered you a deeper understanding of life and a doorway to inner peace.